Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Neutral Game, a fighting game podcast. I am Colin Detmar, and joining me is Miodrag. How you doing?
Hello. I am doing all right. I'm ready to podcast.
So, last month we talked about team-based fighting games, and we mentioned one that was sort of a standout in the genre, which is the Gundam EX or Gundam Versus series. And this month we actually are going in depth with the first entry in the series to reach U.S. shores, Gundam Versus. And has it the first one to hit EU as well?
I can't say that offhand. I can say that there were attempts to westernize the Gundam Versus formula, and they failed miserably. Specifically, there was Rise of Incarnates in early access on PC. I don't know if there was anything on console, but it didn't leave beta because they just shut it off. It was also made by Namco, but it was literally them just going, "Oh, Gundam is too Japanese for people. Here's Gundam Versus, but with edgelord gods."
It seems like the wrong attitude to be like, you know what the problem is with this game? The thing that Westerners don't like is Gundam. Like, Gundam does okay in the States. I don't know why they didn't just do that.
I mean, if you have a problem marketing giant robots with laser swords, millions of rockets, and whatnot, then I don't know who can help you.
Right? Yeah, no, something else has gone wrong with your life. So this series is actually a lot older than that. It's been, I think, since 2003 was the first entry in arcades, and then there were an entry on the PS2. And they've been putting out games ever since. So this is actually, like, even though this is our first exposure to it, this subgenre of fighting games, and it is a subgenre, it is pretty different than any fighting game you've ever played, unless you played Rise of Incarnates, has seen a lot of iteration, and this is a pretty refined version of it. So I don't know, the basic like setup of the battle is that you have a big map. They're pretty much all square, right?
I think they are actually... No, you're right, they are square. I was about to say circle shape, but I do remember there being distinct corners. Mm-hmm. It might not be an exact square, but
yeah, I think they shave the edges or something.
Yes.
But yeah, the generally rectangular maps, with like differing like heights of terrain and occasional like buildings or other structures, some of them destructible, some of them not. Maps, at least in the modes that I've played, you cannot pick, they are randomized, which is kind of a bummer because one of them at least is complete trash.
The training stage.
Yeah.
In every fighting game, the training stage is trash.
Yeah, the training stage in this one is, like the classic, like, oh no, it's like the cyber grid, only in this game where terrain matters and you need to be able to hide behind terrain, it's perfectly level except for 4 very short like boxes you can hide behind that are indestructible.
Yeah. Actually, to just kind of like expand on when we say like the maps are important, I'd say the closest mainstream fighting game where terrain is important that people know of is Smash. But Smash stages function with terrain that interacts with you. I'd say this is closer to a terrain in an FPS, like let's say Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
In the mainstay Counter-Strike maps, aside from the chickens, there's not really anything you interact with. It's just like, a set-up static map and you move around it. In this one, it's kind of like that. The rule is basically there are some things that can be destroyed. There's no hard descriptor of what can be destroyed. It's usually like, okay, on this map you can destroy the buildings, but on this map you can't destroy this box-shaped object. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty important in terms of elevation, line of sight, which we'll get onto later. But it's not the kind of game that would work well on a flat map. It's not like Smash, Final Destination, I didn't want the map interfering with me. Like, this is basically you trying to take advantage of the layout, the elevation, where you can hide, from which angle your attacks are. Like, it makes a difference. Like, if your character attacks from the left or from the right, it makes a difference whether you're hiding on the left or the right side of the object. Mm-hmm. So, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, you made the comparison to FPSs, and, like, there are bad maps in shooters where it's like, oh, this is just a big open space and it's a sniper's paradise, right?
Yeah.
And because of the lock-on system, it's not quite the same idea here, but it is like, if you are a melee-focused mech and you're in a map that doesn't have a lot of cover, it's like, oh, okay, well, the map has kind of screwed me.
Yeah, we'll be coming back to the map part as we talk about other aspects of the game because it plays a big role.
Mm-hmm. And generally this game is played, has 3 modes. It has 1v1s, 2v2s, and 3v3s. I have not played any of the 3v3. I understand it's not very popular. It's pretty new. You and I have mostly played 1v1 because of matchmaking and some difficulties finding good opponents. Just the way the matchmaking is built is kind of unfortunate, where unless you're doing ranked, you can't party up to find a match. You can't be like, we're 2 people looking for 2 opponents, unless you're doing ranked. And it doesn't seem like anyone's playing ranked.
Yeah, it feels like this should have been something they should have nicked from Western games. Just let you group up, Overwatch style and queue. Mm-hmm. Like, that would have made finding matches so much easier. Like, you could even probably do, like, stuff, you play with a random person and you're like, hey, we had fun, why don't you join a permanent group and we just all queue together? Mm-hmm. Instead, it's just kind of like, okay, we had a random match, well, I'll add you to my friend list, hope you accept, and then we can play stuff one day again.
And so now I'm getting, like, I'm playing the occasional, like, 2v2 game solo queue, sort of like late at night. I'm like, okay, I'll play a few matches. And then, like, I wake up and I come to my PS4 that I haven't touched in a couple of days since then, and I turn it on and I have friend requests, and I'm like, who are you? And I look at their profile and I'm like, Gundam Versus, this was probably one of my partners. Okay, I guess I'll accept. But it's just like, that's the most social interaction I'm having so far. It's a clumsy system. Yeah,
they don't really have a good infrastructure. It still feels like you're just playing in an arcade cabinet and connected to the internet. Mm-hmm. Kind of wish they fixed that.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe if this game has I don't know the kind of numbers it's done. It's done better than I've expected, at least, it seems like, because I hear enough people talking about it. Not as many as should. It's a great game. But I kind of expected this game to come and go. And maybe if it takes off, they'll take it more seriously as far as the online infrastructure for, I don't know, a big version update or a new entry. Who knows? But anyway, most of our experience is 1v1 because we can play each other, and we know that we'll be on basically each other's skill level, and it'll be fun. So, but the balance is kind of screwed up in that way.
Yeah, I just like to say that compared to, again, Smash, because that's a party-based game now, well, an optional party-based game. Like, Smash is usually played 1v1 competitively. Mm-hmm. And, like, 2v2 is kind of like the outlier. In Gundam Versus, it's the opposite. Like, 1v1 is the outlier, and it should be primarily played 2v2.
Yeah. And there are characters that are... I don't think any of them are that I've seen at our skill level are outright broken in 1v1, but there are characters where it's like, this does a little too well in 1v1, or there are characters where it's like, wow, without a partner, this one really sucks.
Yeah, it's because the characters are highly specialized in terms of categories. Whenever you look at the mech, you have like 5 categories, which is melee and range are the 2 far spectrums, and then you have mostly melee, middle of the road, and mostly ranged. Mm-hmm. And when you have this kind of breakdown, then when you have, I don't know, like 4 moves on average per character, it gets really hard to make it, balanced. It's almost like, again, to use something like popular, like an FPS. Imagine if you balanced every gun to be good 1v1 versus each other in a game.
Yeah.
Like, it's not gonna work. They're just gonna excel at certain situations, and this is kind of how the mechs work. They work well in very specific environments and very specific situations, but straight up comparisons don't really scale.
Yeah, totally. It's a little unfortunate, but it's just sort of it's gonna happen. It's just an impossible task to balance for both, really.
Yep, no, I don't think it's the wrong decision. I think if they do want to focus on 2v2, it is the right way to go.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess we should talk about sort of the basic flow of combat real quickly, which is just that, so there is a super meter in this game, and we can talk about that a bit, but that's not really what you're, like, that's sort of a once or occasionally twice a match, like, comeback button, almost, or, like, save yourself. The main resource you're using in this game is your boost meter. Your boost meter determines mostly your boosting, right? Movement is like you can walk around, you can do like mini dashes, which consume boost, you can jump and fly, which take boosts, and you can do like boosts, which is just like, you're low to the ground, your legs are back, and you're rocketing forward. And then also certain types of attacks also use boost.
Yeah, I believe melee on almost any character uses boost.
Mm-hmm. And also a lot of the beam attacks.
Yes, it's probably good to like just think of it as your character's stamina bar, and anything you're like doing that's strenuous, like dashing, flying, flailing, stuff like that. That usually consumes boost, and when boost is consumed fully, you're in overheat mode. Which, if it happens while you're mid in the air, you just fall down like a brick, and you are a prime target to be, shot or smashed or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And your boost will automatically start replenishing when you're in neutral, like when you are on the ground and not doing any actions that consume boost. If you're just standing or walking, it will replenish. So you frequently have to just take little pauses to catch your breath, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you want to keep your boost as low as you can get without completely spending it.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like a lot of, at least 1v1 especially, I think, a lot of fights turn into like battles of who can be the most efficient with their boost, because the person who runs out first is screwed.
Kinda. I'd say a lot of encounters we've had rely on that, but you can punish someone who hasn't spent their boost.
True.
There are a bunch of ways to go about it. I'll tackle that later, but it's basically if you can if you can predict where your opponent will end up and hit them, or if the opponent mistimes their boost and just lands instead of continuing to hover, and you can punish that, and you can have almost full boost and be in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So basically, as far as your moveset goes, not everybody has the same options, right? I think every single suit has a ranged attack. I'm pretty sure every single suit has an attack that happens when you hit square, or you can configure the buttons, which is just a basic ranged shot. Sometimes it's like a laser rifle, sometimes it's a machine gun that you hold down. And most suits also have a melee attack, and then you have like other pieces of equipment like your sub-ranged, your special ranged, your special melee, and these are all just variant weapons or options. But your overall moveset is fairly, like compared to normal fighting games, is not that big, right?
Yeah. It's pretty simple. Let me try. I'm trying to find comparisons from games people might be familiar with. I'd say like a MOBA would probably be the closest to this. Like you have like your set of abilities, and that's kind of what you use in addition to your basic attack.
Mm-hmm. And you get some variants of those. It's kind of like, if for a lot of characters, if you do like, there's a character who like when you hit the sub-ranged, he fires pistols, right? But then, like, if you do sub-ranged in a direction, he'll flip in that direction while firing the pistols. So you can do modifiers and stuff.
Yeah, and there's stuff like charging up an attack, holding down a move, and then, like, for example, you hold down your sword strike, and the longer you hold down the sword strike, the more it charges up, and then you let go, and it does a powerful move.
Mm-hmm.
And how it usually works is because the game has basic buttons, and then it does advanced inputs by doing button combos, So let's say imagine like how in Street Fighter a throw is a punch and a kick at the same time. A lot of these abilities you use are actually macros. They're button combinations. So if you are holding down one button, you are effectively locking yourself out of and putting another button. Mm-hmm. So it can be interesting in the way that if your opponent sees that you're not doing a specific thing, he can kind of predict that you're charging your move. Yeah. But also if you're charging a move, you're taking a gamble of not just being able to use, say a sword slash, but also associated combo macros.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I end up screwing up a lot, honestly, in our matches, is that I'm a little obsessed with charging ranged attacks, and it's unhealthy, and it gets me killed a lot, because it's like, oh, Colin hasn't shot in a while, I bet he's charging up his shot, and I can just go in, and he's either going to have to let it go, or, just keep on holding it and hope he can weather the storm.
Yeah. I don't know if this is universal. I at least noticed on some characters that I use that if you let go of, let's say I'm charging a move and I get hit, and I let go of the button, it doesn't go to waste immediately. It just starts slowly decreasing, so it lets you try to replenish it.
Yeah, so you can start charging while you're being comboed. For instance, you can start charging an attack as the map is loading in, and it won't start charging until the match has actually begun, but you won't fire the shot first. It'll just start charging. And also, there are a few that can store a charge, and you can let go of the button.
Yeah, because the game doesn't have, this hold down check. Instead, it just assumes the moment you press the button that you want that move. So if you want to charge a sword swing, even though the move may not actually be a sword swing when it's fully charged, it'll do a sword swing when you press the button. So it will not do okay, let me check for, I don't know, X frames, whether this is being held or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the best option is a lot of times is kind of is buffering, basically, is starting to charge during a different attack so as to not give away that you're charging.
Yep.
And also another thing, just to quickly note, it's one of the basics of fighting games that we should keep in mind is that there are going to be moves that you should not use, right? They're and not you can try them in some situations, but for example, there is I played a lot of a Gundam called Barbatos Lupez when I was first starting out, and its charged melee is throwing a mace with a really short range and not very good homing, and not very much damage, and a real small hitbox, and you just should never do it. It just sucks. You literally always have better options.
I mean, it's kind of true for every fighting game. You will have moves and characters that are extremely situational, or you'll have supers that you shouldn't always use. Basically, just because you have a meter in a game for a super doesn't mean you should use the super at the earliest possible convenience. And that's kind of how a lot of the moves in this game work. I want to say, I played a character called Kimaris that has a ability which sets a lot of floating mines, and you don't want to use that all the time because it has a long startup, it exposes you, and it can easily miss. But when you use it, you can use it to great effect.
Mm-hmm. It's just one of the traps that I think I fell into, and I'm not faulting the game design. It's just sort of what my brain did. Is I was well, the moveset is so much pared down compared to a normal fighting game. Obviously, there's no fat here. All these moves are useful, and I just need to find a use. And sometimes that's true, and certainly look for it. But be aware that sometimes you're going to be actually, this move just sucks, and that's fine.
Yep. But again, it kind of evens out, because usually when you have useless moves, and people don't use them, that means they're less uncommon, and that when somebody's fighting you, they're not gonna expect that move. Mm-hmm. So the one time you use that move in a match to effect, it's gonna pay off. It's just that it's not meant to be a thing you use all the time.
Yeah.
And that's true for, I think, almost any fighting game.
For sure. The other option you have available to you is the strikers, which are assists, right? They are a character that you call on. You have a set number of uses per life, that resets when you hit your super. We can talk about super, but So like it depends on which one you're using. There are ones that are like, oh, this one's really good, so you only get 2 uses, or this one's okay, you get 3, or this one is also really good, but for some reason you have 5, Mio.
No. I mean, the one I have is garbage. But it's usually moves from existing Gundams. Like sometimes it's actually playable Gundams, and it'll be like one of their trademark moves that you can use. Mm-hmm. I'm a practical person, so I only use one, which is the second one I've ever picked, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah, Miodrag uses a lot of the Zaku assist with Throw Cracker, which, you get 5 uses, and it's just like an arc throw of a grenade, and if it hits them, they're stunned. And you get a lot of mileage out of that. Less than you used to, but still.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been in my A game today when we did our test matches, but yeah, it has a lot of uses. It's, again, it's like anything, it's interesting. I start off, I use it a lot, I use the great effect, and it starts, getting predictable, then I have to stop using it, and then after a while I start using it again to great effect, so it's like, I don't know, parries in video games. Mm-hmm. It's like any move in a fighting game, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like it because my logic of thinking with assists is, if they can offer me a utility that I don't have, I am happy to use them, because usually a lot of the assists are just, melee attack, range attack, things like that. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's more like, well, stun isn't a common thing. So chances are, if I use this assist, it'll apply to most mechs to be, a thing that they don't have. Whereas if I get used to using one assist, which is, I don't know, like a ranged missile attack, as soon as I have a mech, as soon as I'm playing a mech that has a ranged missile attack, that assist becomes less useful.
On the other hand, though, generally, I prescribe to that philosophy. Like, I try and get something that, it's like Marvel, right? Like, trying to get an assist that fills out your weaknesses, that covers them up. Like, I've got some ranged specialists where I've got this one where, like, I've got one that rushes with a sword and knocks you away. And it's like, okay, great. That covers me while I'm doing my ranged thing. But also, one of my favorite striker suit combinations is I fly the Throne Zwei, which has an attack where it shoots out a ton of drones that, like, fly at you and attack. Gundam nerds, I know the terminology. I'm trying to keep this simple for folks. And then I have an assist that also throws out drones. And so you throw your drones, and then you throw your assist drones. And obviously that's not covering any weakness, but it means they have to dodge for, like, 5 seconds straight. And by that point, they're kind of served up on a platter to you. So kind of doubling down on strengths can occasionally be a good thing too.
I mean, again, that's another video game thing you can do. Like when you're stacking, I don't know, damage, health, or whatever in a video game, to the point where diminishing returns don't kick in.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. And the other basic mechanic we should talk about is the locks system. And actually, I want to get your thoughts, because when we first started playing, we both had thoughts about the lock system. So basically, in this game, you are always locked on to an enemy. You never lose your lock on, right? Your lock can be green, red, melee, or double if you're playing 2v2s. So what those mean are, green means a person is out of range. You can still hit them with attacks, but your attacks aren't going to, like, track them. You're just firing in their direction. Red means they are close enough that you have a solid lock, and your shots will, to a certain extent, arc towards them and home towards them, but they can still dodge, depending on the attack. Some attacks home better than others. A melee lock means you're close enough to do a melee attack, and then a double lock in 2v2s means that your partner is also locked onto the same person.
My general thoughts on this, I think it serves its purpose because it's an arcade game, and generally if you have a freeform camera or just like free aiming in a 3D space, you need to accommodate that input. So that means it, like, unless they had custom arcade cabinets with, double sticks or, just like whatever, something similar, that would have had issues. Like, this is not primarily a console game, or rather, it didn't start as a console game. So I think in that regard, it's a good solution, because in a way, there is no reason not to be logged on to your enemy. Like, there is nothing in the environment that you'd want to look over your enemy. Like, it's not like you know, like in, I don't know, again, like FPS, where you like want to be able to see other factors, or aim like outside of the enemy's area, or things like that. Like, this game is very much built around the lock-on. The bad thing about it is, I think, the melee, though.
You don't like the melee?
I think the melee, I mean, fighting in melee feels good. It just, the problem is, like, they kind of do this thing where the camera pans out, like, in a more cinematic angle, simply because if you're doing melee and the camera was constantly just following your enemy, like, the camera would just be shaking so much you wouldn't be able to keep track of it. But even with that, like, cinematic angle, there are some weird situations where the camera is just spinning. You know, like if a guy is just, like, straight above you or straight under you, and you're just kind of, well, like, I have no clue where I am relative to them because the camera won't stop moving. Yeah,
we have had, especially earlier on, now we just tend to try and avoid those situations much more than we did. But, like, especially earlier on, we would get in a lot of situations that were scrambles, right? Which is like, oh, we're both on top of each other, and because of the situation in the camera, we're not really sure where we are, so we're just going to keep hitting attack, and one of us is going to connect.
Yeah, and it's especially, like, frustrating when one of the main ways to do melee engagement is to do side dashes, which is basically you just kind of, like, do a basically quarter circle sway around your opponent. The issue with that is the opponent can respond with their own, little side dash, and then you can anticipate their side dash and do your, like, fake out side dash, and you can have this weird thing where you're constantly just going behind each other, and then you just lose track who's where, and you just decide to press attack because, well, if I don't know where I am, I might as well just press attack. Maybe I'm in the right spot. Mm-hmm. And then you pretend it was all planned.
Well, sometimes it is all planned. I'm going to say every time that I've done it has been planned, but...
I have done it a few times it was planned, but a lot of those situations was just me going, I cannot anticipate any farther, so I'm just going to try and attack.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm like... A lot of times I go in and I'm like, I'm going to dodge twice, and then I'm going to attack. And then it's like, well, I should have dodged 3 times. And I'm just like, well, that was the plan. I committed to it, and it didn't work. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and another thing worth mentioning, though, if you're always locked on, like, how do you fight against 2 people? There's a button that toggles, like, between your targets. It can be very disorienting as well, because the game does a decently good job of telling you if somebody from, like, behind you or outside of your field of view is targeting or attacking you. But it's still extremely jarring when you have, like, someone in front of you and you press a button and your character does a 180-degree spin together with the camera. Like, it's still very jarring.
It's very, like, you get a lot more used to it as you play some 2v2s, but it is definitely, like, especially watching someone really good play, it's almost dizzying because it's just like the camera is just zipping everywhere.
Yeah, like at some point you can probably anticipate, like, I mean, obviously you can anticipate that where your character is going to turn, so you can kind of prepare for it. But it ends up being that, when people get the car sick, you get car sick because you're not anticipating the turns that the driver is. Mm-hmm. So if you're watching it, it just looks like a mess.
Yeah, for sure. So at the beginning of our time with this game, I said, basically never shoot outside of red lock, right? I said shooting in green lock is pointless.
And I told you that was not true.
And how do you feel now?
I'm doing it less, but mostly because I know when it's worth doing. Because it's all about how committed are my shots. Like, if my range attacks require a lot of commitment, then I don't want to just like shoot if I don't know it's gonna deny you. It basically depends a lot on the character. Like if I have a lot of ammo on that move, if it doesn't have a cooldown, and if I can like shoot it just like straight ahead and I know I can reload it fairly often, then yes, I will shoot with a green reticle because I want to deny which direction you're going. Like I don't want you to keep going left. I want to shoot there so I know that you're at least gonna stay where you are. The weird part about the green thing, though, which I haven't gotten to use much, is when you're like threading the range between outside of range, aka green range, and within range, which is red range. So when you kind of like are at that like maximum distance, you can basically punish someone trying to shoot while you're in a green reticle. Because what will happen is, again, if you overcommit to a shot while somebody is green and they're on the edge of the range, as soon as you start shooting, they can just dash forward and then their shot will actually track you.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is there's not as much, like, there's not a huge amount of variance in this, but some mechs have better red lock range than others. Yeah. Some mechs are in red while you're in green, and it's like, oh no, this is a problem.
Yep.
The other situations I've seen occur, I've seen this more with people who are better than me. I don't use this very well. But there's a type of attack that is referred to as a Gurobi, which basically just means like you're shooting a laser like it's a fire hose, right? It's just like this big fucking laser that just brrr and does multiple hits, sustained attack. And those are really useful, apparently, from green range because you can, like, they're usually often very wide and they're very unexpected and you can deny area and also randomly clip people with them, even from green.
Yep. And also, to tie into the map, because we said reference it again, because you have destructible terrain, like objects like buildings and stuff like that, if you're in green range, but you're behind a building, and you know you can see where your opponent is because of the reticle, like you know the general direction. Because they can't see your wind-ups, though, you can basically do like that Gurobi or any other like object-piercing attack and just hit them through the object. Mm-hmm. The only tell really is that the reticule stops moving. Yeah. Like if you see someone behind an object and they're like green reticule is standing still, and you know they have those kind of attacks, you can kind of predict it. Mm-hmm. And then you go to the bluffing phase where you're intentionally standing still so they would move to the side because, you know, you aren't actually charging your attack.
Yeah, and if you get really attached to that strategy like I do, here's a tip. Really make sure that building's destructible. or else some attacks will just hit it and do nothing. Some attacks will blow up in your face, as I discovered today, and that was bad.
Yeah. That's also one of those weird things where, because my assist attacks from my left side, then I like aim to basically approach someone behind the building from my left so that I can still be behind the building or object, but my assist will actually not be and hit the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun. I like the way terrain works in this game. Its interaction with the different weapon types is pretty fun.
Yeah.
I also just like it's not as like affecting to the gameplay, but it's really satisfying when you do a melee combo and end by like kicking someone through a building. That feels pretty good.
I mean, there are also some moments. I think there's I don't know what that place is, but there's that a map with those massive orange tubes, like the glass vats. When you break the glass vats, all the glass just falls down, and it's not transparent glass, so you can't see through it. Which means, as that is falling apart, you can be anime as all hell and just rush through all the glass and attack an enemy that didn't expect you to run through.
I think that's actually my worst map, because the tops of those glass things is destructible, but the bottoms is not, and my elevation game is terrible, and I always get screwed by that.
Yep.
So, the other thing we should talk about is it's pretty crucial to the way the game works, which is the cost system. When you play the game, you have like a team HP pool, basically. You've got a team, you've got 1,000 units, let's call them, right? And when you die, those units are consumed to respawn your mobile suit. every mobile suit has a specific cost associated with it, which is based on how strong it is. And if you're a 300 cost and you die and you respawn, you cost 300 from your team's total points. If you're a 500, you cost 500. When you run out of points, you lose.
Yeah, but also if you have, say, 200 points left and you're a 300 and you respawn, you're going to respawn at proportionally lower capacity.
Right, you respawn with 2/3 of your normal health. And so the game, like, especially, I think, in the 2v2s, you really have to consider, like, the cost of your team as a whole. You want, like, okay, you're a 500, I can't also be a 500, or else, like, we're screwed. One of us dies once, and then we're both fucked. And it actually becomes, like, one of the most common mistakes you make, and I have made this a lot, as a new person, is thinking, like, well, I should play, like, a 300 or a 200, because I don't want to be a burden, right? That is super wrong thinking. Like, you play what you want, but if you're trying not to be a burden, you should actually play the 500, because the 500 has the resources to be effective. The 300's job, more often than not, is to stay alive and not be the first person to die, because if you die first, your 500 is coming back weak. So you have to stay alive with less tools, and that's way harder.
I mean, I like 300 because I hate respawning with less health. That's just me.
If you're doing things right, you won't have to. If you have a 500 and a 300 in 2v2s, and the 500 dies first, the 500 will come back almost full health, and your 300 is fine, and it's okay. If the 300 dies first, the 500 is screwed. So it's really, like, you play however you want to play, but just keep in mind that, like, it's not as simple as, like, okay, well, let me pick a 300 and I won't get in the way. It's like, no, you're gonna have to pull your weight either way.
See, my thinking is, like, I'm a 300, I'm not some scrub that needs 400 or 500 points to be good at this game.
You'd think, but I think as we demonstrated today, sometimes when you're a 300 fighting a 500, it can feel insurmountable at times.
Oh yeah, but also if you win, then you feel like a real anime hero,
That's
like
true.
the underdog.
That's true. It's pretty good.
It's like winning with a joke character in other fighting games.
Yeah. And so, like, generally 500s have better, like, their move sets are usually proportional to their cost. It's from 500 to 200, 500, 400, 300, 200. And usually your move set is equivalent to your status. Sometimes mobile suits have disproportionately good or bad for their tier. That's just how balance works sometimes. But what is universal is that they have more HP and more boost as you climb up. So, like, if you're doing, like, like ranged pokes, like your shoot dash, shoot dash, shoot dash, a 500 will just, if you're equal levels of skill, a 500 will win that against a 300 basically every single time.
Yeah. And also the 500 ones are all the cool mechs, so, Jesus mech, Poncho mech, Pirate mech, Gladiator mech, Golden Savior, Angel mech. Basically all the cool ones are 500.
A lot of the really cool... That's my problem... Not my problem with the game, but the thing that tempts me really badly is a lot of my favorites are 300s. 300s have some really cool ones. A lot of the 500s are ones from shows I didn't like, and that's a personal problem, but it is a problem for me.
Oh yeah, for reference, I have never seen an episode of Gundam. I just really like robots.
And I've seen a lot. And I like Gundam. And the other basic 2v2 concept is sort of forward versus back, or sometimes melee versus ranged. It's not always that simple. But basically, you want, at any given time, you don't want to both be on the aggressive at the same time. Because you're going to get in each other's way, you're going to both get clipped by the same AoE attacks, and also you need to kind of control who's going to die first, because probably one of you is going to die. And so you want to sort of like agree on, like, okay, one person is going to play forward, they're going to be aggressive, the other person is going to be in the back and support them, and then when you die, you switch off, because whoever died is probably going to be lower strength, and then they need to play back and play support. And those team dynamics can be really tricky. It is easy to, like, if you're playing one of those Gorobi characters, those characters with those huge beams, to be super helpful and clip your team because friendly fire is on. At 25% damage, but it's still on. You could still totally take your partner for a ride with a big laser. So be careful about that. So I don't know, I guess just like talk about some of your favorite like characters in this. Mia, what has spoken to you?
Well, so far what I've seen from here is I like having options, so anything that I tried that was strictly melee only or strictly ranged, I just didn't like. I don't like not having an option. So I've mostly been doing hybrids on either scale, usually like hybrid melee focus or hybrid ranged focus. It doesn't like really matter. And I've mostly been playing the MK2, simply because it really has all around really good options. Like, it has good range, it has good melee attacks, it has a dash-in, it has a shield. It basically has everything I need. And the other one I've enjoyed playing has been the Chimaris one, who is basically like a centaur mech, that's pretty melee oriented, but has an okay machine gun. So that one I mostly enjoy that one because it has a gimmicky landmine move, and I kind of like when I can cover an area or an approach that is not too common. Mm-hmm. Like, I like because like the mines basically are a good thing to do like on the opponent's wake up or as a immediate response, for a dash in, things like that.
If you like that, you should try the Gyan, which is the other one I know that has a mine attack. That one, what it does is it shoots the mines out of its shield as it backdashes, and so like as you're rushing in, it jumps backwards and leaves mines where it just was. And that one's pretty tricky.
Is that a knight looking one?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw you play that one. I wanted to try that one now, but I kept forgetting.
It's pretty good. I don't know, I've tried a whole lot of them. I'm not having trouble settling. Partially because I like the ones I end up like really liking. You then find a way to counter, and then I'm like, oh, okay, let me move on. Like, I was a big fan of Gundam Virtue, which is this like ranged specialist with like, you know, huge beams and lots of ranged attacks, but can also like charge to purge off its armor and turn into more of a hybrid unit. But like, you would just immediately close to melee and it'd be like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to purge off my ability to be a ranged dominator, and then why am I even playing this guy? So that was kind of screwing me over in 1v1s.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I haven't been branching out as much, because usually in fighting games, as soon as I find something that I like, I just stick with it. This game, if, let's say, I were to play it seriously, I'd probably do the thing I do with Overwatch, and that's, like, learn a mech from every category just to, you know, have something for the team. But in general, because I was playing the MK2, I just, you know, okay, this is fairly versatile, so I'm just going to see what you're doing and, you know, bang my head against the wall for a few rounds until I figure out how to counter you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know, it's to me, it's part of the temptation. I don't know, you don't seem to have this problem in any fighting games that I have, which is just like, I find the number of options really tempting, so I can't settle down just because it's like, there are so many different cool things for me to try. I don't know. I don't, this is bigger than Gundam Versus, but I don't know how you just stick with one or two characters. I don't know how you do it.
Basically, as soon as I find something that clicks, I kind of view things as a challenge to overcome. Basically, if this matchup is really bad, I'm just gonna bang my head against the wall until I figure it out. But that also means I always play characters that have overall decent tools or options, which means like in Guilty Gear I play Potemkin, but because he has a few matchups that are just obscenely bad, I had to stop playing him because, okay, this is not something I can overcome. So I'm just going to pick someone that has a few better options. I like to be prepared.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that's probably it for Gundam Versus, except for a final entreatment. Guys, you should really pick up this game and play with us. This game's really good, and it's not just that it's really good. If you've been playing a lot of fighting games like we have, it feels really fresh in a way. Like, it's familiar enough. A lot of the concepts, there's footsies, there's the neutral game, there's poking and spacing. But it just all feels different enough that it's really refreshing. And I'm really having a great time.
I'm gonna do another comparison here. If you don't play fighting games, this is a decent thing to pick up. Because it's kind of like, oh, I don't play competitive shooters, but I bought Overwatch.
Yeah.
Like, this, it seems intimidating when you talk about all these things, simply because there are, so many universal mechanics that you need to learn as compared to, a hero shooter where it's very character-focused mechanics rather than universal mechanics. But it's fairly easy to pick up. Execution, I had some issues with it because of the way it prioritizes, multiple button presses, but other than that, if you can click buttons in a MOBA, you can click buttons in this game. It's not really all that complicated, and if you don't even like Gundam, I don't like Gundam. I mean, I don't follow Gundam, but I like robots, so it's pretty cool.
And yeah, comboing is possibly the most forgiving in any fighting game I've played in years. It's really technically pretty forgiving.
Yeah, it's just press a button several times or press button plus while holding a direction several times. It's really simple to get into, and it's different enough from your standard issue fighting game to be enjoyable because it emphasizes things that Street Fighter, Tekken, and Guilty Gear and standard fighting games just don't bother with.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, folks. We will. You can find this podcast on your RSS feed, whether you're getting that through iTunes or Google Play or some other method. You can also find it on YouTube, thanks to Miodrag's efforts of putting it up on there. Can you give us the URL? For the channel, obviously, not for the specific video.
Yeah, it is youtube.com/c/scoreattack. So if you enter that URL, it'll go directly to the YouTube page, and you'll be able to watch the video, unless you're already watching it, in which case the URL to the other feed is downstairs in the description.
Yeah, we'll post it in the notes.
Yeah, and also before we go, just want to plug one more thing.
Sure.
So in December, so hopefully the day this podcast comes out, I'll be doing a fighting game month on stream where I'll be playing through a bunch of fighting games, around half an hour per title. So if I manage to play all of them, that'll be around 90 games the entire month. Probably gonna end up being something like 80. But it's gonna be good games, bad games, games I'm familiar with, and games I'm unfamiliar with. So if you want to check that out, that'll be on twitch.tv/RealSovietBear, or you can watch the VODs, which will probably end up on YouTube.
Yeah, and timing will be tricky for me because of time zones and jobs and things. But I'll try and guest on as many of those as I can. It'll be a good time.
Well, at least the Blaze Blue one.
I hope so. God, I hope I'm not working. But even if not, even if I'm just commentating on some Battle Arena Toshinden, it'll still be a good time. So.
I mean, it's Battle Arena Toshinden. I'm not sure it's going to be a good time, but yeah, let's say that.
Savage. All right. Knives out for Battle Arena Toshinden.
Yeah. But anyway, you can also follow us on Twitter. I am at MDK Roman numeral 2, so MDKII.
I am at SIXTWOSIXFOUR. That is 6264, but as words. And thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Next month.
Bye-bye. Next month, yeah. Please, not weekly podcast. Bye.
Bye.
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 Podcast. Bye.